Akbar, three years ago, we were on this stage and we talked about Rwanda and the potential for investment. Subsequent to that, of course, the investment came with Rwandair and the airport. What was it that actually made you put your money where your mouth was, as it were?
Quite frankly, I think that we saw the potential in a place that is right in the center of Africa, a stable economic and political climate, and the relationship they have with the state of Qatar. I found that this was the prime place where we could invest in Africa. We see the huge potential of Africa, the resilience of the African people, and okay, it is an airline and the airport that we are building in Rwanda, but keeping in mind that it will attract expertise from all around Rwanda, and it was very clear from His Excellency the President of Rwanda that he don't only want this to be a project for Rwanda, but he wants to also invite the neighboring countries to benefit from what we are going to do here, and this is very exciting to me. And I also feel that we will be able to create the human capital that Africa has. But it will be a long way. We will need to train them. We will need to bring them up to speed. But what is important is that there is a will to do things in Africa, and it only needs a kind of a leadership. And I'm glad to say that we are getting the support that we require from the leadership as a G2G partnership to grow this business and to serve not only Rwanda, but to serve the African people.
So it's a government-to-government thing that's got you into this. Commercially...
I want to remind you that Qatar Airways is a government company.
Yes, okay. Both in many ways, yeah. So that government relationship is, of course, incredibly good. But commercially, you said this morning, to President Kagame, I promise you, we are going to be looking at this getting bigger. Qatar, relatively small country. Rwanda, relatively small country. The potential to punch way above your weight. Do you see Rwanda being able to do the same thing in Africa that Qatar has done in the Middle East?
No, it is not all about punching above our weight. This is about confidence, relationship, economic interest of both countries with each other, and this is all what we are going to do. But I also want to remind you something, that when we say government to government, I don't have a blank check. I have to make sure that whatever business I get into is economically viable, and it is going to generate jobs, economic benefit, and of course return on the investment that both sides are going to do. It is a partnership between the government of Rwanda and the government of Qatar. And again, like I stated earlier, we are here to develop this industry in Africa, and maybe a lot of people in this room, they don't know that the airport is very much advanced in its construction. So it is not only talk we deliver, but very quietly.
Okay. So Africa, as we know, is 54 countries. It's a huge market, huge potential market. Do you see Qatar Airways or Qatar government and other African governments watching this model to see if it can work in other places to truly cover the whole of Africa rather than a small part of it?
No, why not? I mean, this is an opportunity for all Africans. not only to learn from this model, but even to be able to do it. But there has to be the political will and the political direction to go ahead and get things done. Decision making is very important. The protection of each other's investment is very important. And the human resources that we would require to do this. Because this is not, a company that's going to import, people from all over the world to come and work here. Yes, in the beginning we will need, because we need to jumpstart the industry, but this is to provide jobs for Africans. And this is what we want to do. And this is what we are going to do.
I'd like to pick up on that, because we've heard now several times that people, skills, training, and we have a session coming up on that later this afternoon, is incredibly important for the growth of business. We're starting at a pretty low point, generally in our industry at the moment, but how do we get training, not just pilots, how do we get training across the board to enable us to grow a business to be world-class?
One of the plans we have is to build, together with the airport and the airline, a training institution to train cabin crew, train ground staff, train handling staff, train equipment operators, train engineers, even train pilots. We have a flying school in Qatar, where we could bring the Rwandans and other people from around Rwanda to come and to get trained. We have very advanced training facilities, and that will be transferred here in order not only to bring the training for Rwandese employees of the airline, but also from the region to make it a center of excellence in aviation for Africa. The human capital that Africa has is huge. It is over 1.4 billion people in this continent. When you go, even here, let it not be taken as a criticism, but a positive criticism, that people have jobs, but they are not trained to do their job. Training is so important. When a country needs to progress economically, you need trained people to do that. And unfortunately, in Africa, the governments are not paying enough attention to train their people. And we have, for example, in my country and in my company, we have many Africans in ground services, in customer services, in cabin crew, we have pilots. But these people see opportunity outside. So they leave and go and work outside. But they don't come back to bring that expertise that they have learned back to Africa. The only way to do that is to create a center of excellence here, so that we do the same training that we do, and then they stay behind with us, that we do here, and they stay and serve their own country.
Because that is very much one of the criticisms.
That is the most important aspect of us providing jobs, and providing well-paying jobs, not taking advantage because they are in Africa. Well-paying jobs to Africans to work in what we are going to build. We have a grand plan, and we will deliver on that grand plan.
But there is much criticism amongst particularly the service industry in Africa and a number of the airlines that the Gulf carriers suck out the talent to bring them in, and of course pay double what they could afford to pay there.
Yes.
Whose fault is that, yours or theirs?
No, we pay people not on the color of the skin. We pay people on their capabilities and the training and the quality they bring to us. They are leaving. They are being sucked by us because they don't have that opportunity here. And this is exactly what we need to do. We need to create opportunities for them in their own homeland, so that they can stay, work, look after their families, and contribute to their own country.
Okay. Now, we've got here today, I think something like 60 airlines here. Now, if I put you into the seat of one of those African airlines, what would you be doing differently from what those airlines are doing to try and get more of a success story from African carriers?
I won't answer that question of yours because that is not going to happen. Because my government will hang me if I even think about it. So let us go to the next question.
Well, let's imagine with our science and technology, we're able to introduce cloning. So we've cloned an Akbar Al Baker Mark II.
It takes a long time to clone people. They cannot wait that long.
Okay, this morning you commented about alliances, and you said that One World was probably not as well as you would want it to be. You're chairman of One World. It's got to change. What is the strength of alliances, and how should African carriers be in those alliances? And also, I want to just pick up on what we had in that last session. Are we actually seeing with South African and Kenyan the start of a purely African continental alliance?
Why not? If they have the ability, and I would like to make a conversation with the CEO and MD of Kenyan. If there is a requirement, if there is a potential for that, I think everything should be explored. Up to now, alliances have been using smaller airlines to stifle competition. And me, as the chairman of One World, I want to create an alliance that is win-win for every single member of the alliance, and not try to let the big boys in the alliance to take advantage of their smaller colleagues. And if the vision for the alliance as a business model for win-win for everybody is really the right way to go and to develop those alliances in Africa. Once they have the economic scale to have an alliance between the airlines, why not? When you have that scale available, yes, they should be encouraged. Everything for them to develop this industry in their homeland should be encouraged.
Okay. And how do you see them doing that? Do you see African carriers? I know we have increased in numbers. RAM is now one of yours, I think, in One World, and we've seen the Star Alliance doing well, and of course Kenya is in an alliance. Do you see genuinely there is a place for those smaller carriers, because don't they have to have the standard that you expect an alliance member to have?
Well, yes. When you need to become a member of an alliance, you need to have the right IT systems, you need to have right of governance, you need to have a proper technical structure. Because you see, once you become an alliance member, you are code-sharing. So you're transferring your passengers on the other airlines and vice versa. So you need to know that the standard is uniform. And for Africa to gain the momentum of having a big alliance between African airlines, you need to create airlines, you need to create efficiencies, and you need to create the volume that you require to be in an alliance.
So Rwandair is now feeding in to Qatar, I think. You now have Qatar flights. Yep. And is there a place then for Rwandair to be a One World partner, or does that actually automatically work?
No, it's not automatic. It depends on how they grow and how they fit into the requirement of One World. We would like Rwandair to be part of One World, and we will do everything within our ability to bring them to the standard to be ready to join the One World.
Now,
as a full member or as an associate member that we have now been taking few airlines that we have been working with.
It's long been a criticism of the African route network that there are huge gaps in direct flights from point A to point B. I've been looking at it myself the last few days, and it's almost easier to go back to London or to Doha or to Dubai to get to where we're going. Because of that, we're seeing a lot of interest in startups in a number of countries that believe they can do it. If the government of Qatar were to say, hey, we're stopping, and you wanted to start up an airline, what would you need to be doing? How do we advise these people here that are desperately running around trying to get the finance to get an airline going? Is it a good business? Is it worthwhile?
You see, the reason why the carriers are not getting financing or support from the banks or support from aircraft manufacturers, because so many airlines started up and then they failed with massive losses. If you don't have really the right mindset, the financial capability, I always tell people when they come to me, they said, Akbar, we have this big idea, we have this big population, we want to start an airline, we are offering you, a big stake and the huge potential here. And I very straight away tell them, and there are a lot of times they are not governments, but they are businessmen. I tell them, if you are a billionaire and you want to become a millionaire, you have to then launch an airline. And airlines, startups, in my humble opinion, can always be a government. Without the government getting involved and having the financial muscle, because no airline in the first years will ever make a profit. So you need to have the stomach to accept that an airline that you're starting has to be done in a very professional manner, in a very planned manner, with adequate financial resources till it gets off the ground. And this is where a lot of airlines in Africa have failed, because they have started with a vision, but then one of the three things that I just mentioned for the airline to succeed is not available. But the potential is there. And there is a huge potential to have a hub. Africa has no hub. Like you just mentioned, if I want to go from point A to point B, I have to go through a point C. I have people from South Africa coming to Doha to go to UK. I have people coming from different regions of Africa doing the same distance backtracking to get to a third country. And this is where we want to create an airport and an airline that will do service not only to one country but to the entire African family.
Is now a good time to be thinking about starting an airline? I mean, we've had the 2 years that ravaged us with COVID. Qatar suffered financially as well. I know you're into your product, but you've lost money again now. How is it a really lousy time to be running an airline?
I think that you didn't focus what I said in my speech. We were the most profitable airline last year, so I don't know from where you are talking about the loss. We did the loss the first year of COVID. I don't think there is any airline that made the profit. We actually, from our size of airlines, received the least government equity, whilst everybody got billions in subsidy and state aid. We didn't. None of my employees were paid by the government. We paid them. We lost the first year of COVID. Our financial year is from April to March the following year. So April 20 to March 21, we lost 1.7 billion as an airline. and we took $2.4 billion worth of impairment on aircraft that we grounded and we didn't want to use them again, because we do a very transparent accounting, unlike a lot of people in the past used to accuse us. So the loss that was 4+ billion, more than half of it was impairment. So it was not a book loss. Sorry, it was a book loss, it was not a financial loss. And when we closed our financial year in March of 2022, we were an airline that made the highest profit. We were the largest international carrier by ASK, and we started to grow before anybody else. We launched so many new routes, like I mentioned, in Africa alone, in the middle of the pandemic, because we really have the courage to take risk. And you know, when you take risk, if you take 10 risks and you lose on 3 or 4, you have still gained on the 6 or 7 of them. And we were very successful. We never stopped. We repatriated other airline passengers in the first 4 months of the pandemic, where airlines just stopped, give a damn to their passengers. We were there to take them safely back to home with absolute protection against any infection in an aeroplane from COVID. And I'll just give you an example. I don't want to tell you the name of the country. We transported 350,000 of that country's nationals back home. Only 34 passengers of them were COVID positive. So this again tells you that, and this was in the peak of COVID, in countries that had huge COVID numbers, shows how safe air travel is when it comes to getting transmission from COVID. So all what we did really put us on the map. We repatriated nearly 3.5 million people in the first 4.5 months of COVID being declared in March of 2020. Don't also forget that we repatriated nearly 250,000 people from Afghanistan in a very short period of time, with 0 COVID infection reported from those transported people. So again, coming back to why we did this because Qatar Airways is known to be with its passengers at good times and bad times. We are not only there like all the other airlines that stopped operating because, you know, we are only there in good times. And we paid $1.9 billion of refund within the first 6 weeks of we shrinking our network due to the COVID.
Okay. Can I pick on refunds now a little bit as well? It ties in with relationships, something we're talking about here. I think I'd always heard was that relationships are vitally important with your suppliers. We know you have a bit of a challenge at the moment. What's the update on that? And if you're talking to other airlines here, how should they be managing their relationships with suppliers such as the OEMs and their 2-tiers?
Look, I know that everybody is aware we have a problem with an aircraft manufacturer. I'm not going to be dragged into it. We are litigating, so I will leave it at that. You know, if talking about suppliers, it is very important that suppliers should know that they have to support their clients, their customers, at the time of difficulty in order to gain the long-term confidence and long-term business opportunity with them. Suppliers and OEMs should not look at only to the distance of their nose. They need to know that the whole industry is in a predicament at the moment, not only because there was a huge downturn in demand due to COVID, but also because the governments spoiled the employees by keeping them at home and paying them hefty salaries, which now is impeding the requirement of these airlines and the governments to bring back people to work. And this is very important, that people should realize that they need to take advantage of the demand that the upturn in aviation has created, and not look at the short-term gain that they got from their governments and start avoiding to go back to work, because it is extremely important for them to realize that in the long term they need to go back to work, and they need to go back to work in a profession they are really very happy with. You know, aviation is like being a drug addict. Once you get into aviation, you don't want to get out of it. I think it's maybe the smell from the engines.
Don't forget, this is sponsored by Rolls-Royce, this session, so let's talk about smell from engines. So,
No, but Rolls-Royce engines are now smelling less because they emit less CO2.
And that's, you know, you mentioned sustainability.
Is there somebody from Rolls-Royce here?
There's lots of people from Rolls-Royce here.
Then they need to make me a big check for that.
Sustainability, Qatar Airways, you say, is ready for it. As an industry, we need to be firmer, to be harder in defending what we actually do. Our record is better. Just talk me through that.
I mentioned in my speech this morning that, you know, we are the least emitters if you really look at the CO2 emissions from different sectors of the industry. But now, whatever it is, we are getting the flack from the customers, from the general public. But what is important to know, to know, what is the alternative? Is there any alternative to aviation? And my answer is no. So the only thing we can do is to pressure the technology providers and the oil companies to come up with alternate fuel. It could be hydrogen, nitrogen, SAF, whatever it is. There is not enough aggressive research going into the field of alternate energy supply in order to mitigate the challenges we have to reach our targets by 2050. We want to do it. I don't know if we will be able to do it. People who produce SAF are not producing them to get the volume, to get the economies of scale, because they have invested so much in oil fields. They keep on investing in new oil fields, and they want to get the return on investment. So there is no incentive to research and produce large volumes of SAF so that they can reduce the price. You know, if I want to buy SAF today, I have to pay at least 3-4 times or 5 times the price of a normal aviation fuel, because there is not volumes produced to get the cost down. I'm ready to pay 10% or 20% more than what I'm paying for my fuel uplift today, but not to the extent of 4 times, because at the end of the day, it will become so uneconomical for you to transport your cargo, to transport passengers on a commercial airplane. Or the passenger will have to pay 3 times or 2 times the price of the ticket they're paying today. Very simple.
So we came out of the crisis with COVID. We seem to be amongst other great chaos at the moment, whether that's going to be from oil prices, shortage of jet fuel, as we talked about, also uncertainty in the world with you know, the difficulties we're seeing at the moment. Do you think we're coming into another challenging part of that whole roller coaster that we have in aviation? We're
Yes.
not having a period of...
Yes, no. Unfortunately, the unwarranted conflict that is happening in the middle of Europe is going to put massive pressure on our industry. The energy prices will go up, recession will go up, and you know, we just started to recover from COVID, and now we have another conflict. So unfortunately, though the airline industry has been very resilient to conflicts, this one, unfortunately, we don't see light at the end of the tunnel. And this is my greatest worry of what is going to happen tomorrow if the conflicts escalate, recession goes through the roof, which is happening now, joblessness will be created, and our industry, which depends so much upon trade, commerce, and tourism, will be affected in a bad way. I'm sure you agree.
We're at the end.
You can admit if you agree. I know that you.
I do agree. Totally agree. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question. I read a piece in the Sunday Times in the UK, and they were looking at Akbar Al Baker, the man, not the public image. So they asked you about, what music do you want to listen to? What books do you read? What are your hobbies? And I think you said none. You've got enough business running.
Only people like you who retire and like Mark Pilling, they have time to read books and listen to music, We have to run a big airline, and we are civil servant, so we have to keep our buttocks on the chair and do our job.
So when you go to bed at night and you don't dream about that little island, the paradise beach, what is it that you dream about? What's driving you?
What is driving me is the service to my country. Very simple.
Akbar Al Baker, you've served your country well and represented it well here today. Thank you again so much for joining us for this Untitled Chapter.